Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something powerful today. Just because they left doesn't mean they get the last word. You may have been hurt, you may have been silenced, but let me be clear. You have the final say, not them, not their silence, not their absence. You hold the pen now in how this chapter ends. It's up to you. Your silence has power, more power than you probably realize. It's not just about staying quiet, it's about what that quiet says. When you stop explaining, stop reaching out, stop begging someone to see your worth, your silence starts to speak a whole new language. A language that only the ones who truly care can hear. And the ones who don't, they notice it too. Because the absence of your voice is louder than any words you could have said. When you go silent after someone hurt you, especially a man who thought you'd always be there, it disrupts the pattern he got used to. He's used to you checking in, sending those just thinking of you texts, making sure he's okay, showing love even when you were the one hurting. And when that stops, when you fall all the way back, it shakes him. Not immediately, no. At first, he may think you're just being emotional. He might assume you'll come back like before. But days turn to weeks, and that silence turns into something real. He starts checking his phone and not seeing your name, starts scrolling through social media hoping to see if you're still watching. He notices your absence in ways he never appreciated your presence. Because silence creates space. And in that space, a man is forced to sit with himself. Without your voice guiding him, reminding him, validating him, he has to hear his own thoughts. And that's when the realization starts to creep in that the woman who was always there, always understanding, always pouring into him, isn't available like before. That he can't just call you and expect you to pick up on the first ring. That the emotional safety net he took for granted might be gone for good. Silence also reflects growth. It shows that you've shifted your focus inward. That you're no longer trying to convince someone to choose you, that you've started choosing yourself. It's not a passive move, it's an intentional one. It's you saying, I'm not going to keep repeating myself. I've said what I needed to say. Now I'm letting my peace speak for me. And that kind of silence, that's strength. That's a woman in her power. There's a reason why men start showing back up when you go quiet. They feel that energetic disconnection. You're no longer feeding their ego, no longer responding to breadcrumbs, no longer giving them the reaction they used to thrive off of. And when a man can't feel that control anymore, he gets curious, confused, sometimes even panicked. Because you're no longer operating on his schedule, playing by his rules, or waiting for his timing. But here's what's key. Silence doesn't mean you're cold or bitter. It means you've outgrown the need to prove your worth. You've realized that love doesn't require constant chasing. That someone who truly wants to be in your life won't need to be reminded or persuaded. You're not punishing anyone with your silence. You're just finally prioritizing your peace over the chaos. You're stepping back from conversations that go in circles. You're letting go of the version of you that accepted half effort and empty promises. And let's be honest, some men only start valuing you when they realize they no longer have easy access to you. When your energy becomes unavailable, they begin to reflect. They start thinking about the way you laughed, the way you showed up, the way you cared even when you were tired. That's when regret creeps in. That's when he starts wondering if he made a mistake. And while he's sitting in that silence, you're growing, you're healing. You're not waiting by the phone. You're not hoping for a knock on the door. You're rediscovering your worth in the quiet. The beauty of silence is that it gives you space to hear your own voice again. Without outside noise, you can finally ask yourself what you want, not what someone else needs from you. You begin to recognize that the love you were giving away so freely is the same love you needed to pour into yourself. And the man who left, ghosted, or pulled away, he starts to see the difference too. Because silence is not absence. Silence is presence of self, of clarity, of power. And once you learn to live in it, you no longer rush to break it for someone who never deserved the sound of your voice in the first place. Men often come back for ego, not love. That's the part many women miss when they see that text come through or that phone call after weeks or months of silence. The heart wants to believe it's because he missed you, because he realized you're the one, because he had a breakthrough. But more times than not, it's not about the depth of his feelings. It's about the bruise on his ego. When a man leaves and thinks you'll chase him, he's operating from a place of control. He expects you to react, to beg, to question, to fight for him. And when you don't, when you go quiet, when you start living your life, when you show peace instead of panic, that's when the ego gets involved. That's when the what-ifs start to mess with his pride. He doesn't always come back because he wants to build something real. Sometimes he comes back because the silence is too loud and the attention is no longer feeding him. Sometimes he comes back because he's surprised you didn't fall apart without him. He thought you would. He thought your world would stop spinning when he walked away. But when he sees you glowing, moving on, laughing, not looking back, that wounds the part of him that thought he still had you wrapped around his finger. Ego hates being forgotten. Ego hates being replaced. So when a man sees that the chapter he thought he could return to is closed, his pride goes into survival mode. That's when you'll hear things like, "I've been thinking about you," or "I miss what we had," or "I didn't realize what I had until it was gone." It sounds deep, but often it's just the ego dressing up in the costume of regret. It's not about building with you. It's about checking if he still has a key to your door. A man returning out of ego wants to feel wanted again. He's not offering consistency, accountability, or growth. He's fishing for a reaction. He wants to see if he still matters to you, if he still has the power to disrupt your peace, and if you let him back in too quickly, if you forgive too easily without change, he sees that as confirmation that he never really lost you. That's why some men come back only to leave again, because it was never about staying, it was about winning. The ego doesn't crave love, it craves control. And once it gets that sense of "I still got her," it's satisfied, even if his feelings haven't changed. That's why the same man who begged to come back can go cold the moment you start loving him again. It wasn't about rebuilding a future. It was about soothing his pride. Once his ego is fed, he no longer feels the need to keep showing up. This is why discernment is crucial. When a man reappears, don't just listen to what he says, watch what he does. Is he coming with changed behavior, with consistency, with a real plan? Or is he just testing the waters to see if you're still emotionally available to him? A man moved by love will move differently than one moved by ego. He won't leave you confused. He won't ghost again once he feels secure. He'll do the work, show up, and be intentional. But when it's ego, everything is temporary. The calls, the charm, the attention, they're all surface level. They're just tools to see if they can still pull you in. And once he gets what he came for, your attention, your emotion, your forgiveness, he often disappears just as fast. Not because you did anything wrong, but because he was never in it for the right reasons. You have to know the difference between a man who truly wants to love you and one who just wants to feel like he still can. One seeks connection, the other seeks validation. And when you've done the work to heal, to grow, to understand your worth, you'll start to recognize the difference in their energy. Love doesn't play games. Love doesn't leave and come back just to see if you'll still open the door. A man driven by ego is looking for reassurance, not a relationship. He's checking to see if you're still an option. And your power lies in showing him that you're not an option, you're a choice. One that doesn't entertain temporary visits from people who walked away without a fight. Because when a man returns with ego, not love, what he really fears isn't losing you. It's knowing you finally realized you never needed him. Don't confuse his return with real growth. Just because a man comes back doesn't mean he's changed. It doesn't mean he's healed. It doesn't mean he's finally ready to give you the love you deserved the first time. Sometimes a return is just a repeat of the same cycle, wrapped in new words and dressed in temporary effort. And if you're not careful, you'll mistake his reappearance for progress and fall right back into the same pattern that once broke your heart. Growth is not in the apology. Growth is not in the I miss you text at 2 a.m. Growth is not in the bouquet of flowers or the sudden rush of sweet words. Growth shows up in consistency, it shows up in accountability, it shows up in changed behavior over time, not temporary charm in a moment of loneliness. A man can come back and still be the same person who left. The only thing different is the way he approaches you because he knows what works to get your attention. There are men who will leave you, do no internal work, make no real effort to understand their role in the pain they caused, and still have the audacity to walk back in like time alone somehow made them better. They confuse time with growth, but time doesn't heal what you don't face. Time alone doesn't change someone who's unwilling to confront his own emotional immaturity, his own toxic patterns, his own lack of effort. So when he returns, the question isn't why is he back? The question is, what did he do while he was gone? Did he reflect? Did he seek help, learn, grow, own his actions, and commit to becoming a better man? Or did he just feel lonely, miss your comfort, and hope you'd still be waiting? Because real growth doesn't just show up with words. It shows up with action. It shows up with humility. It shows up with a man who no longer needs to convince you he's changed because his energy makes it clear. Don't let your desire for love blind you to patterns that haven't shifted. Just because you want to believe in his potential doesn't mean he's ready to meet it. Potential will keep you stuck. Potential will keep you waiting. Potential will keep you forgiving the same behavior over and over again while calling it progress. But growth, real growth, makes you feel safe, not uncertain. It moves with clarity, not confusion. It stays, it shows up, and it doesn't ask you to prove yourself worthy of love this time. There are men who return not because they've become better partners, but because they're uncomfortable with the idea of you moving on. The thought of you giving the love they took for granted to someone else triggers something in them. But that's not love. That's fear. That's insecurity. That's possession. And those emotions may look like intensity, but they are not intimacy. A man who has truly grown will not just want you back. He'll be ready to love you in the way he couldn't before. He'll acknowledge the hurt he caused without making excuses. He'll listen without getting defensive. He won't just say, I've changed. He'll show you. His actions will match his words. Consistently, not just for a few weeks or until you let your guard down. He'll create emotional safety. He'll make you feel seen. He won't rush you to forgive him. He'll be patient with your process because he'll understand that real growth is not about convincing someone to trust you. It's about becoming trustworthy. You owe it to yourself not to romanticize the return. Pay attention. Is he consistent? Is he emotionally available? Is he ready for the kind of love you're ready to give? Or is he just afraid of letting you go for good? Sometimes what feels like love is really just fear of loss. And when you confuse his return with real growth, you risk stepping right back into pain that was meant to teach you to move forward. Love yourself enough to ask hard questions. Love yourself enough to not let the history you share become the reason you ignore the present. A man coming back is not enough. A man coming back different, intentional, honest, and accountable. That's what growth really looks like. And anything less than that is just a detour on your path to real love.